Hey guys, Dr. D here with AlphaOmegaWellness.com, where we help you find well. Listen, I'm really excited for today's video because you're going to meet a patient of mine named Eric who has suffered with opioid addiction for a number of years. And if you know anything about the origin of our office or me, we started 5 years ago as a faith-based opiate addiction treatment office because I had my own opiate addiction 19 years ago. And I share that very freely because I feel like that by being transparent about that, it allows me to connect with people in a completely different way. Make sure that you click the subscribe button so that every week I can bring you tactical advice for how you can improve your health and your wellness. Hey guys, Dr. D here with AlphaOmegaWellness.com, where we help you find well. You know, I've shared my story with you before that our office started 5 years ago as a faith-based opiate addiction treatment office because I had my own opiate addiction 19 years ago. And so God kind of laid on my heart that I could actually connect with people who were struggling in the same place that I've struggled. And so that's actually how our office came to be. So I'm really excited to share with you today this interview with a patient of mine named Eric, who has decided to come on here and just share his story, hoping that that will be impactful to you or someone that you know, because, I mean, I doubt anybody's watching this has not been touched by the opioid epidemic. And, you know, I think that Eric and I are both testimonies to this disease doesn't care about what you do. Like, it will just come find you, and a lot of us are vulnerable to that. And so with that, Eric, man, thanks for being here.
No problem.
I really appreciate
to be here.
Thank you.
Glad.
Let me just ask you, before you came in to our office, what was the biggest challenge that you were facing in your life?
I would say the biggest challenge would be just being there present every day for my family mentally, because it seemed like I was always chasing, you know, the drugs or, you know, chasing a drug dealer. Pills, there was no balance at home.
Okay.
You know, or in myself either. So I would say that's the biggest thing for me was just I wasn't consistent.
Okay. So what was your drug of choice?
Pain pills.
Okay.
Vicodin. It started out kind of easy, and then of course I graduated to the bigger, badder things.
Right.
I never did any needles or anything. It was always pills because that would keep me functioning to work.
Right.
And hide it a little better as well.
Right. So you said that your biggest challenge, though, is that you just really weren't present at home. You were always chasing the drug or the dealer. So how'd that make you feel inside? Like, what were you dealing with?
A lot of depression. I would say, you know, the biggest thing is I wasn't present mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let me tell you that. I mean, as far as I couldn't dive into everyday tasks and feel that I was benefiting or my spouse was benefiting from me,
Mm-hmm.
because in the back of my mind, oh, I got 3 pills. I can't do this task, or
Right.
you know, I would always think about those things.
Yeah.
And you know, those things would always hurt me inside to where I just felt like I wasn't a good father, a good husband. You know, it does damage to your ego.
Right.
You know,
Well, I mean, you know as well as I do, like, people who are in the throes of drug addiction, like, they're in bondage.
Yes.
Like, you're a slave.
Yes.
It's not a matter of just, I want to get high or this is fun. This is
No.
like, I got to stay ahead of this so I don't get sick.
100%.
And I've had people in Greenwood tell me that they've driven all the way to Noblesville for 4 tablets.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just, it takes up so much real estate in your head.
100%.
And you just, like, that becomes what your whole
Yeah.
life focuses around.
Oh, big time. You know, and those are just little trips. I mean, I've
Right.
known guys that's went to other states for drugs. I mean, you don't realize what kind of bondage you're really in until your prescription starts running out.
Right.
Or, you know, now I could say prescription, but back then it wasn't a prescription.
Right.
And even just, you know, driving without a prescription.
Right.
You got drugs on you.
Right.
That's another ball game. I mean, you don't understand how far down it goes. You know, you can go in the rabbit hole of a lot of things that could get you in trouble. And you can't be present and can't be you when you are doing those things.
Right. So what would you say changed for you after you came and started seeing me?
A lot. As far as the faith-based part, like we've talked, I didn't have relationship with God. I was one of those guys, I would bend knee to ask for what was beneficial to me,
Right.
but I didn't reach out to God to just tell him thank you.
All right.
And I was living a really toxic life. And once I came to you, it was a lot of things. I was on Suboxone for about 4 years before coming to you, and I was getting them off the streets, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But even taking them, I didn't feel sober.
Mm-hmm.
I still went to work. I still did everything. Being on Suboxone at that time was a lot better than it was when I was on the pain pills because I could manage them better.
Right.
But I still wasn't doing all the little things like group.
Right.
I wasn't talking to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I was still keeping everything bottled up inside as far as how I felt about myself. So a lot of things changed. My whole life changed coming to you. My relationship, faith, and even just looking at the steps to get to sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot's changed for me.
So when you say a lot's changed, like what has changed? Like what do you notice is different for you now? Like how's that impacted your life?
Accountability, one, because now, me being prescribed, I don't have to worry about, what I'm taking each day, what I'm doing with them, where I have to go to get them. As far as, that headache has gone.
Sure.
It's long gone.
Right.
So I can be more accountable at home with
Mm-hmm.
my wife and my kids, as far as not worrying about those little things. And going and actually sitting in a church is humbling, especially when you're nervous, you've never been, you go in there, you don't know who's looking at you, how you feel, but
Right.
you're not judged.
Right.
And that was the great thing I felt about you is you never judged me.
Right.
So I could be myself, and even coming to group and being able to open up, because I never was that kind of guy. And even my coworkers can tell if I don't go to group or not.
Right.
They'll ask me, have you been going to group? No, why? I can tell you need to go. And, my relationship, finding God and then also going to group and being able to talk with other men and even like-minded men, getting those things off your chest is a must.
Yeah. People don't realize that.
No.
It's so important.
Coming to you isn't just a doctor. You've
Right.
also been my therapist, And there's a handful of things that comes with the package of you. And it's been great. I can't complain.
Oh,
And
I love it.
I've never found another doctor like it.
Did you ever picture that you'd be somebody who was developing a relationship with God or?
I craved it.
Yeah.
You
felt it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Any guy or woman that says they don't,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I would call their bluff.
Yeah.
Because I think the older you get, I think you start to tend to notice there's a void. And of course that void for me was God.
Well, I think it was Augustine who said, man's soul will not rest until it rests in you.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. We've talked about, we all have this God-shaped hole in our heart, but we
Right.
put other things in it.
Right.
Put drugs, alcohol,
Big time.
sex,
Gotta fill the void.
money, right?
Yeah.
But it never satisfies. And
Right.
so, yeah, man, that's awesome. I've enjoyed watching your growth.
I appreciate
and,
that.
yeah, because, we offer these things, but you have to open yourself up to that, right? Like
Right.
I always said, my life got better, changed radically when I actually got out of God's way and let him do heart surgery on me.
Mm-hmm.
So then I changed from the inside out.
Right.
So now I'm not just trying to white knuckle through being sober or white knuckle through not having a hot temper or white knuckle through,
Right.
I'm just changed, what I want changes, right?
Mhm.
Because it's changed in here.
Right.
And I think that's the key.
And I think
that's-
that goes back to even as far as what's changed for me is I was a very tempered person, and now I can let a lot of things roll off my shoulder because I start to look back as, the saying WWJD, what would God do?
Right.
And you got to think those things. I mean, I don't walk it out every single day.
Sure.
But I do know that it's down there
Right.
in the bottom of my heart, like, you're going to do these things. You got to at least give it 100%, you know. And you might not always do it, but you're going to have to answer for it if you don't.
Right.
So,
When we see the consequences of those actions,
Right.
I mean, you've already shared with us how your relationships got better the more that
Right.
you sort of open yourself up to doing life differently. And that's exactly my story.
Yes.
It's like, like now I have a house that's full of peace and joy and contentment and love. And like, I never realized how much that was missing before.
Correct.
So
I think it was because we were into our own self so
Right.
much.
Yeah.
And then the things that you don't like about yourself, a lot of times you will neglect to look in the mirror
Right.
and notice.
Right.
And then
You
when
project those on other people.
Correct.
And that's everybody else's fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You always have an excuse for why you was that way.
Right.
Well, once you start to learn that it's really on you,
Yeah.
it's a little bit overwhelming, but that's what groups and talking to people's for.
Right.
Because you might think today's the worst day you've ever had until you go listen to somebody else.
Right.
And then there's, even in going to classes and groups with you, I sit back and listen to other men talk, and there might be little things that I can put into them
Right.
to say, hey, I don't know you very well, but let me say I did this, I've done these.
Yeah.
And you never want to do it in a kicking a person way,
Right.
but you just want to let them know, I've done these things too, and this is what's gotten better for me.
But that's the value of community right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. There might be somebody out there watching who's still struggling with pain pills, or maybe they're buying Suboxone on the street,
Right.
and they really are on the fence about coming to AlphaOmega Wellness and getting care. Like, what advice would you give that person?
I know taking the step forward is hard. You get very content with your schedule of doing it your way and buying them off the streets or doing whatever it is that you're doing, and it's not a legal way. Getting care is more important than getting high. And that care is what's going to take care of you in the future, because you don't know what these pills on the street are no more.
Right.
And it was very hard for me to reach out to a doctor or go to a Suboxone clinic or anything like that, because I was content.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't happen to me. Those are the things I would tell myself.
Right.
I know who I'm getting them from.
Right.
That person wouldn't do that. They're not pressed pills.
Right.
Well, that's just not the truth or the case.
Right.
And a new patient coming into Alpha Omega would really be surprised how much of it's more of a family-driven place. You're not a number, you're not a dollar amount, you're not a ticket. There's some places that you don't even ever see a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the places that you go to that's every day.
Right.
Nobody has time for that.
Right.
And that's why they don't take those steps.
Right.
But when you come to a doctor that is willing to reach out, do you want to come to church with me? Like me and you've talked.
Mm-hmm.
I told you no.
I know. You said keep asking me though.
But keep asking.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's going to be a day I know that I'm going to be ready.
Right.
And you did that.
Yeah.
And I don't know another doctor that would say, hey, come with me and my family. There's no judgment on who you are, what you've done, or anything. I want you to sit next to me and my wife at church.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know another doctor that way. I don't know another doctor that would give you their personal phone number and say, reach out to me if anything's going on. I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been that to me. I mean,
Thank
you've
you.
been monumental in my life. Like, I don't know where I would be without you right now, because I've been to all those other places. And, they didn't help whatsoever.
Wow.
And finding you, and my wife will even say it was God blessing, because you have given me the tools, or if you haven't, I know that you're there to give them to me to keep succeeding. And you've laid no judgment on me for anything that I've ever brought up in class or to you. And, I think that if people are willing to step forward and get out of the situations that they're in, to actually go to a doctor, go to a clinic, go to a place that you're going to get actual help. Even if you're not ready to get off of them, that's fine. But set goals for yourself to take those stepping stones. You don't have to do it overnight, because we know it won't happen if you try.
Right.
It'll get worse. But there's not another place like Alpha Omega. I'm here to tell you that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I always think about trajectory, right? Like where are we headed, right? And so when you're still buying pills on the street or whatever, like your trajectory is not in a good place. Like it's heading. And so just being able to change that trajectory and like help people get to a different level.
I mean, before I came to you, I was driving a vehicle with no license, driving a vehicle with no insurance, buying them off the streets, working a job every day, sometimes 40 to 60 hours a week, going to a drug dealer to buy my Suboxone. It only took one time for me to get pulled over and them to take everything from me.
Yeah.
I was already at the bottom anyways.
It changed your life.
But it can get way worse.
Yeah.
And now I have a driver's license. I have a company vehicle now. I mean, all these things progressed once I opened up my vulnerability to let it.
I think that's God's blessing.
I agree.
Yeah.
And even the story of how I was introduced to Alpha Omega is kind of different, because I have a boss that's my best friend. His wife is a dental hygienist, and you go and speak at classes. And she was at one of the classes that you spoke at.
Right.
And she got your card.
Yeah, I forgot that story.
Yeah, and she was like, I really like this guy.
Yeah.
And she is very plugged into the community in Martinsville and Bloomington, and she knows a lot of people. And she was like, I've never met a guy like this. And they knew, because it's not a secret that I was addicted to Suboxone. And she was willing to open up for me to say, I know you've been talking about wanting to get better, wanting help. Well, here, I think this would help. And, I have to credit her as well. That, it's just a different story as well to hear that and to find out how I met you and Alpha Omegas in a different way. But people knew I was hurting and knew I wanted help.
Yeah.
I wasn't lashing out for it, but I was very honest about being tired. I want to get to a point to where I'm not on it. I'm in a better place. And even though I am in a better place now, it's still more work to be done.
Sure.
And that's where I'm at now with you, is I can get down to the tedious things of what I need to do to get to the bigger picture.
Right. Anything else that you want to add?
One thing is just take the step. It's worth it. I think a lot of people fear. I know my biggest fear of getting off Suboxone, and it's kind of put me in a vulnerable place to say is I don't know who I would be without it. That was always what I kept in and not told nobody was, I knew who I was when I was young, when I was a teenager, but who am I going to be without it? That takes a lot of thinking and a lot of patience to figure out, who are you going to be?
Right.
Because you do something every single day. I mean, it's like going to work, and you only specialize in one thing. If they fire me tomorrow and I only know this one thing, how am I going to get another job?
Right.
I mean, that's kind of how I felt about my own personality and my, thought process of who I was going to be. I thought I wanted to be the old me, but I don't want to be the old me. I want to be a better version of me. And I think that you are giving me all the tools to do that.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, we're weird because we actually try to taper people off of Suboxone. Like, we don't try to keep people locked into that.
Right.
I make it very client driven though.
Right.
Like, I don't want to push people that direction, but when they're ready to taper, I'm ready to taper them, and we just walk that out.
And me and you had that conversation. You're like, look, and I told you from the get-go, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. And you said, well, there will be eventually a day that I'll say, hey, let's cut you down a little bit.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity to say no.
Yeah.
And I told you, well, if I say no more than twice, that third time, don't ask. Because as addicts, you know that you won't, and you know that you have to be pushed.
Right.
But being pushed by somebody that has been in your shoes is way greater than somebody judging you.
Right.
You know, and you've been in our shoes.
Right.
And you understand.
Right.
And I don't know if there's another doctor in the state of Indiana that's that way either.
There probably is, but maybe
they're not going to admit it.
Share it,
no,
right? Yeah, for sure.
No.
Man, that was just a delight talking to Eric, and I hope that that's blessed you. Hey, listen, please share this video because there are people around you who are struggling with addiction that still haven't taken that step in order to get well. And I think Eric's story is just beautiful about how, you know, he overcame that hesitancy to come get help. And now you see how his life has been blessed. You know, I think Eric's a perfect example of Psalms 34:8 that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. You see, when Eric came to us, we just kind of shared with him, like, what has God done in our life? How has he transformed me from the inside out? And so I hope that you will go on your own quest, if you haven't found that, to tap into that spiritual side of yourself, because from my worldview, we are all eternal spiritual beings. And I believe that the way to God the Father is through the Son, Jesus. And so let me just encourage you to, you know, get into the Bible and read it and just look for truth. Maybe start with the fourth chapter of the fourth book of the New Testament, John, and just learn about Jesus, who he is and what he taught. And I think it's going to make a big difference in your life. Until next time, take care, be healthy, and let us help you to find well.